Hello everyone. First and foremost, I want to thank Professor Nickie Phillips for having me here. It's really an honor to be back in St. Francis as an alumni. I graduated about 3-4 years ago, class of 2010. Just to give you a little background about me, who I am, and where I grew up. Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. Spent all my education as a Catholic schoolboy from grade school and on to graduating from St. Francis. I didn't know what I wanted to study when I graduated high school. I thought I was going to be an IT professional. My senior year in high school, I had interest in information technology, computer information systems and whatnot. But right around 2005, my second year at St. Francis, I was about 19, 20 at the time. Probably look as young as you right now. There was some major headline news across the nation. One actually, in fact, was a major Supreme Court decision in 2005. Another were about 2 or 3 famous stories, and as I recollect, they inspired me to take my first introductory course here at St. Francis in the fall of '05. That's when I decided, this is really interesting. Some hardcore, whether it's national headline news about, different victims and unsolved murders, cold cases. This was something I was really into. So I said, okay, so I'll graduate '09, I was supposed to graduate '08. So in 2005, I don't know if any of you have heard about this young woman, Professor Horowitz here, who escorted me to the class. I took her for a few courses, and if you guys have taken her, I do recommend to take different sociology and criminology classes. She's an excellent lecturer and a graduate from Yale University.
Thanks, Richard.
So, backtracking on 2005, any of you have heard of Natalie Holloway? Is that the correct name? Natalie Holloway? So you guys are pretty familiar with that case. You never heard of it?
I heard your name, I have not.
Okay, well Natalie Holloway in 2005, a very beautiful young girl, 18 years old, just a high school senior. She went missing in Aruba, and this became national headline news when she never returned on her flight back to, let me see, I don't know what high school she went to, Mountain Brook High School in Birmingham, Alabama. So she went out traveling in her end of senior year, and she didn't show up back in the States. So her body was never found. I don't know what's the recent developments, but this story really inspired me about this high school senior, went on a trip. She was abducted somewhere in Aruba. The latest I've heard was 5 years later in 2010. A federal grand jury has found out about information leading to a person in connection with exchanging some ransom for her remains. But I don't think at this point do we know where she is. So this case, I mean, look at this. We're in 2014, and this is like over 5 years ago. So one of these cases really inspired me to take on criminal justice. So enough a little bit about me. I'm glad to be here. Let me just backtrack a little bit about the Supreme Court decision. I was a high school student. I was 17. I was on a track team. I used to do a lot of crazy shit. Seriously. I used to jump turnstiles, carry pocket knives, you name it. I mean, and I was a Catholic high school boy. We would do crazy stuff, smoke weed, all you name it. I'm speaking to you as adults here, because obviously all of you are 18 and over, right? God forbid any of us as a juvenile would have to face the death penalty. 2005, the Supreme Court decision voted 5-4 Can any of you have an idea what happened then, 05? The Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, decided 5-4 to abolish juvenile death penalty and dismiss 70 cases of juveniles on death row. So this was like a major Supreme Court decision. And a case like that, other than the Michael Jackson case, the trial, he was found not guilty. I mean, 2005 was a year, I was 19, 20, I said, you know, I think criminal justice is going to be the route for me. So, anyhow, I hope maybe towards the end of class you could share with me, you know, what inspired you to study criminal justice, or is this just an elective you're taking? Right before I graduated, well, was going to graduate, I was short one course here, a thesis. I became a victim of a very traumatic, life-changing event, and that was in the summer of '09. I was 23 years old at the time, and I never knew this was coming. I really thought this would never ever happen to me. I was ready to graduate from St. Francis, fall of '09, finish my thesis, and I'll be on the road to work for Homeland Security or any federal agency that I was interested in, such as ICE, which is Immigration Customs Enforcement. But that changed my life 360 degrees. In 2009, in that summer, I was assaulted by a group of 3 individuals, different age groups, on the way to a subway. I never got to that subway. I was in South Ozone Park, Queens. Some of you may or not familiar with this neighborhood. I think it has a demographic of West Indians, Indians maybe, some whites, Spanish. Anyhow, 23, I was naive, trustworthy. I would think everyone was cool, down to earth, and I was attending a function, a party function. I was leaving the party. I was alone at the time. I was leaving the party, and these 3 same individuals were from that same party. And this was a private party at a house. I was walking on Rockaway Boulevard and 125th Street. I don't know what that neighborhood is. I don't know if it was a high crime area. I don't know if there was police there. I don't know if there was any friendly people around. So I suffered a brutal attack. I don't remember anything of it. Maybe that's for the best of it, I guess. In that same month, when I was assaulted, the police never reported this as a crime. And for any of you here who are going into law enforcement, I suggest you pay very close attention, not to scare you in any way or undermine your future goals of doing what you really want. But I really need to stress the level of importance between the police and the community. When a crime goes underreported, it changes your whole view on who police really are. You know, some of us know police as giving summonses, pulling you over, harassing you, or, you know, stop and frisk. We have different viewpoints on police. So my viewpoint was very good. You know, I wanted to be one of the good cops. This is not a bad cop, good cop scenario, but this plays very well into race and thank you. Residence, where you live, where you're from, why were you in this neighborhood, your background, the assailant's background, you as a victim. This all plays into the criminal justice process from the get-go. So that night, I was left for dead on the streets of South Ozone Park. I woke up, unfortunately, 2.5 hours later. The only thing I remember, I was screaming in a horrendous amount of pain. I was very bloody at the scene. I was very bloody. I tried to get up. I couldn't get up. I kept falling. Some people thought I was a drunk, but I did remember bleeding externally from my nose and ears. Luckily, there was a 24-hour car wash. This was a wide boulevard, by the way. There's a lot of 24-hour commercial stores out there. You would think that someone, a good Samaritan, would pass by and call for help. But it all really depends on the community. This is probably something new to them. They don't know what this is. It's probably someone who's probably intoxicated. So I do want to raise your level of awareness of if you see something, say something, and that doesn't just apply to anti-terrorism. It applies to all areas of crime. So that night, I think if I didn't wake up 2.5 hours, in about 2 hours, I think I wouldn't be here today speaking in front of you, because when I did get for help, someone alerted 911, called 911, alerted an ambulance, and when things go wrong, your whole life changes. Not just as someone surviving an injury and dealing with an injury on a young age, but believing in what you want, using your passion, say, I'm graduating, and this is what I want to do. I want to help others. I want to be service to others. I want to investigate crimes. I want to develop something new to prevent crimes. I took Professor Nickie Phillips as my last semester before getting injured, social research methods. Take a wild guess what I studied in social research methods, or what I wrote about, which was supplemented as a thesis. It's very prevalent across the New York City public schools, and we have zero tolerance for it. Do you have an idea? Bullying. Bullying in New York City schools, and oftentimes bullying, we think the term bullying as children do that. That's wrong. Bullying happens in all shapes of form. Whether you're an adult, whether you're an employer, whether you're a celebrity, gay, lesbian, heterosexual, it doesn't matter. It comes all ages, all areas of life. You can be a victim of a bully. So I recognize on the event it says victim's perspective. Yeah, I was a victim. I don't consider myself a victim anymore. I consider myself a survivor. But in criminal justice, the term survivor does not exist. We're more familiar with the term victimology or victim. That's used more concretely in our criminal justice books that we learn about. Survivors more in positive psychology and areas of social work to uplift yourself as identifying who you are. So just to backtrack on that night when I was assaulted, it was a very painful moment in my life. I didn't know what happened to me. I was screaming. I was yelling. It wasn't making any sense to the people who called 911. They didn't know what I was saying. They were Spanish speaking, bilingual. I spoke English. I didn't speak Spanish. They called 911. Maybe they told them I was drunk. So a police patrol car arrived to the scene. You would think that a police patrol car, part of their duty, their sole duty, one, is to, as a first responders are not just EMS or fire, it could be police as well, and their role as a police officer would be to help the individual. They don't have to necessarily touch him, but to get help immediately. So the police patrol car arrived to the scene. I was on my knees at the time. It's very interesting. I remember every fact after I woke up, but I did not remember anything before. And this is where the criminal justice system gets worse in terms of when we get to the prosecution stage. What happened, I was on the doors of the police car. They did not come out. They did not come out of the cop car. They were just looking at me and asking what happened, and I was just screaming, 5 guys, 5 guys, 4 guys. I don't know what I was saying. So they radioed FDNY EMS, and they came rushing. I was immobilized on a stretcher. Later I'm going to show you an article recently in October where NYPD failed to respond to a 911 call immediately. The man is in a coma due to a violent assault. I'm going to share with you that article. You can see an image. He was in much worse shape than I was. He also had a neck brace, but there's a catheter, a tube, a breathing tube. In any regard, just to let you know, that police report, I had my faith that the police would file the police report. When you're a first responder, the first thing you need to do as law enforcement, you need to file an AIDA report. An AIDA report. Now, an AIDA report doesn't apply to all parts of the crime. An AIDA report might be, for example, an AIDA report could be loss of stolen property, for example. But regardless of the fact, a police patrol from the local precinct arrived, they must file a complaint report, documented. And when they return to the precinct, that complaint report must be now on a system called Omniform. I'll share with you some terminology of those technicalities later. But this is my perspective of the police. I was one angry 23-year-old at the time. Everything changed around me. Everything changed. I don't know, there was no police report filed. 1 a.m., I was assaulted at 10:30 p.m., August 15 of 09. 1 a.m., I was in the ICU at Jamaica Hospital. And Jamaica Hospital is notoriously known for trauma, you know, various forms of life-threatening injuries. So I was lucky I was like close by where they picked me up, 7-minute short distance. It was unfortunate that I spent a few days in the surgical ICU on standby for neurosurgery. It was very horrifying that 3 days in the ICU, there's still no police report found. There were police patrol in the hospital, said we don't have nothing in writing, we don't know what happened to this person. The only thing you have is a pre-hospital report, which is documented by the EMS. And I'm very grateful to this day that the FDNY did their job terrifically. But the police of the local precinct, however, failed to do their job. In that sense, luckily my parents were in this country because in the summer they love to travel. So immediately the hospital called to inform my parents that, you know, your son here was assaulted by a group of men. He's in the ICU. So immediately the next day my parents arrived. They're shocked. They're big shock, and just by looking at me, they didn't know what to say. They didn't know what to say or how to react. There was wires coming out of my hands with a neck brace. I was swollen. You know, in that regard, that's a very sad image of it can happen to anyone, anytime, anywhere, and it can happen to you, of course. God forbid if it ever happens. That's why I want to inform you about making connections with the police. I'll talk a little bit about that later. My parents were here, so I'm grateful for my parents for being here to help me as a victim to go physically to the police precinct of that neighborhood, separate from Jamaica Hospital. Wherever they picked you up from, there's a different police precinct. Go there physically. My father went with his brother to inform the precinct, my son is in the hospital, we need to file a police report. It didn't happen right away. They had to wait for hours. And there's a civilian employees at the precinct who are informing them, listen, why is there a FDNY report? And my father was saying, why is there a report? There's no police report. Well, there's no ADA report. The secretary of the precinct on the when you first enter, there's some civilian employee that helps the visitors coming in. You don't file ADA reports, especially if it's an assault and robbery. Police view us sometimes we're ignorant, or they know better than us, that we don't know as much as they do. And that's really prevalent. They want to know, and if you do show as if you know information like them, they do get upset, they do get angry, because they think now that they're in a position that they can't tell you what's really there and why it didn't happen. So, reporting a crime took a while. And that's a first step. That's the first step in a criminal justice process when we're talking about criminal investigations. That's another class I recommend you to take if you're interested in that. It's a very good class. And police practices and procedures. That's a very interesting class as well. In regards to that, the detectives came within a week. I was still hospitalized. My entire hospital stay was about 22 days. From being acute into the rehab part of the hospital. So at that time, detectives kept coming to the scene, to the hospital to visit me and kept asking me, who did this to you? Who did this to you? What happened? Who was there with you? And from that time, they kept showing me mug shots. Mug shots is part of the pre-lineup stage. They come on a photo array. They're usually 6 pictures. Most of the time, actually 95% of the time, or if not all of them, I'd say 95% of the time, they're all previously incarcerated individuals. That's when the detectives has been handling the case. So, in regards to that, the police report was filed late, and detectives were quick to show you photo arrays, other than take a description from me. They took a description from me. I was in the worst shape. They literally asked me to write down what happened to me. As I recall, a group of men assaulted me, threw me to the ground, kicked and punched me repeatedly to the side of my head until I was unconscious, fractured to the skull. I don't remember anything else I wrote to them, but when I wrote that to them, the detectives filed it immediately as robbery, because robbery is a felony offense, so is assault. But the reason they didn't file assault and robbery, which should have been the case, was because robbery carries a higher sentence than an assault. Because to do a robbery, you must do what to commit a robbery? You got to assault someone to commit a robbery. So they filed that as a robbery, not just an assault. So things went wrong already from that scenario, from the police report. That didn't go as well. After being discharged from the hospital towards the end of September of '09, I thought I was going to graduate that fall, but that didn't happen. I was still incapacitated. As a matter of fact, I was incapacitated for a good year of intensive spending my days and months in and out of the hospital for outpatient therapies to relearn the basic things that we take for granted every day, such as walking, speaking, cognitive thinking, emotional behaviors, and that took a while. And that full year was the most depressing, horrifying thing. I thought I was going to be a criminal, maybe hurt myself, hurt someone else. You become a whole new person, whole new identity. And it took also another year. I started volunteering for Rich Loutfi in 2010. I was doing some writing for them, But that was also painful for me because I was spending a lot of time in therapy. And that didn't end till spring of 2011. So for 2 full years, I was spending my days and months in intensive neurological rehab. And now I see a physician once a week at Mount Sinai. And it's been 4.5 years to this day. I'm standing here in front of you, giving you some whereabouts of the effects of the crime and the type of crime that led in the outcome of such a horrifying event. Here's one thing: as a detective or law enforcement professional, never ever promise a victim of a crime what the outcome, what the charge will be. 6 months after the crime took place, the detectives called me and my parents to come to the precinct. This was in February of 2010. This was the 3rd photo array that they showed me, and that's when they convinced me, one of the detectives who's handling the case, Richard, the guy is in here. We can't tell you who he is, but he's in here, and if you pick him out, we get the ball rolling on this case by tomorrow morning. And I promise you, when I do catch this guy, it's going down for attempted murder. He will be charged with attempted murder, but it's really up to the ADA that I will get. It's up to the ADA that will be assigned along with the detective to prosecute this case. That was all full of baloney. Arrest never happened. I picked the guy because I was convinced that that was the guy in the photo. He didn't tell me which one. They cannot tell you which one it is, but they could tell you he's in there somewhere. But if you know for sure, and I want you to pick him out because he is in there, so I took my closest guess. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you around, I'll pass around a photo. Maybe some of you have seen this. I've seen this here in St. Francis, either in police practice and procedures or criminal investigations, or a photo of a young woman, old woman. Have any of you seen this? If some of you that have seen it, you can raise your hands. I won't show it to you. That goes to tell you that I was so confused. I had to pick this guy from a photo array before arrest can be made, before a lineup can be made, before a testimony from me, an actual documented testimony at the precinct when I pick someone from the lineup, and before prosecution could take place. I was so confused and horrified. This is a 3rd photo array, February of 2010, 6 months after the crime. These guys are getting so close to nailing this terrible crime that took place. 2.5 years later, this case was closed. That's when I found out, but that's not when they closed the case. They closed the case a 1.5 years later. A 1.5 years later is when they closed this case. And I didn't really I kept calling, and it's very good as a victim to press on, have high perseverance, and not allow them to do whatever and say, I'll call you when an arrest will be made. Don't worry about it. I got a lot of cases going on. I got 30 cases in my file. Don't worry. You signed the picture. You signed your name on the photo. We know who it is. I kept calling every week. They also said we have HIDA involved. We have a warrant squad out there. We have 2 I-cards. I-cards is only issued when they're looking for a warrant for an arrest. It could be a warrant for arrest, or it could be a warrant for questioning. So in that regards, I kept calling. It's been a year. I'm getting frustrated. At one time, I was leaving therapy from Jamaica Hospital. I decided to go to the precinct and speak to one of the detectives. One of the detectives knew me because he was handling the case in the beginning, but he gave it to a different detective. That detective, when he met with me, he said, Richard, why are you so much involved in this case? Why? We told you we'll call you when we arrest this guy. Detective so-and-so told me attempted murder. Attempted murder? He told you attempted murder? You're lucky if you get robbery for this or assault. No, he said attempted murder. Oh, I'm going to have a talk with him. Maybe we'll move him down to patrol if he told you attempted murder. And I was horrified then. But I was almost dead that night. Yeah, well, you could get manslaughter. But you didn't die, so you'll get robbery, if anything. Well, I have to speak to this detective. The reason I was so open with him and told him what the other detective told me because they worked together. Not that he was on the case, but they did work together, and this guy viewed me in the hospital. He was handling the case in the beginning before he transferred the case to him. In the beginning, when the detectives are speaking to the victims, it's not 100% that they will be, that has to take place in the very early week or so before they transfer the case. Otherwise, they are married to that case for quite a while. So in that regard, you know, they closed that case in, I would say, a year and a half after the crime, close to the beginning of 2011. I didn't find out till summer of August 2011. That's 2 years later. 2 years later after the crime. These guys were at the party. They knew who these guys were. There was a video surveillance at the party. Someone was taking a video of the party. Detectives never got a hold of that. 2 years later, I saw pictures of these guys on Facebook through a friend. Well, I didn't friend her, but you know Facebook nowadays, you can catch anybody. You can catch anybody. Facebook, social media, it's a great tool. Detectives didn't even think about using social media to solve this case. I became my own detective. On Facebook, I saw pictures of the party. Two years later, I started thinking about the name of this girl at the party. And without friending her, her photos were on private, were not anyone. She didn't make her photos private. It worked to my advantage. I was able to click on her photos, and I saw 135 shots of the party that night. I scrolled down, keep scrolling, oh shit, I see me, I see myself in that, I see myself in the party. And then I look at one of the photos. There's these 4 guys who assaulted me that night. And she's in the picture with them. Perfect. I get excited. This is August of 2011, 2 years later. I'm calling the detectives. I got new information for you, new information. Now he's not there. He's not there. I'm speaking to like his supervisor, other detectives. I need to speak to detective so and so. You know, I have very important information for this case. There's an ID card. There's a warrant squad out there looking for this guy, and I have new information for the case. You know, it took a while. It took a while. Eventually, the information never got to them. You know, they didn't want to take this new information from me. You know, they didn't want to take this information whatsoever. So I'm really thankful for being an alumni from St. Francis. Had I probably went to a different college, a public college, or a different, much larger university, I probably wouldn't have gotten the support and advocacy that I received from here. Luckily, I met a retired cop, a retired lieutenant from the NYPD who's an attorney, and with the help of his advocacy, I was able to, within 6 months, so now we're talking February 2012. This is 2.5 years after the crime. 2.5 years after this crime took place in Queens, New York. You know, the phrase is who you know, what you know, and that doesn't imply in the workforce. It actually implies in all facets of life, and that's out there in the real world. What you see on CSI and Law and Order is not how the criminal justice system functions, and that's the reality of things. And it's also based on the community. You take, for instance, that community, South Ozone Park. You could research that community and see what types of crimes occur in that neighborhood. maybe in the past 5 years, one assault takes place. The detectives are not going to push to get an answer for this. They want to close this case as fast as possible. Why? Based on the ties to the community and the residents living in that community, and based on the crimes that occur. South Ozone Park, for example, has a high rate of home invasions. Police are quickly to respond to home invasions. Why? To report the crime. To report the cases. Some of the crimes go underreported, some crimes are overly reported. It's really important to make friends with your local police precincts. And when I say make friends, I don't mean to hang out at the precinct and buy them beer and drinks and whatnot, but speak to an officer. Let them know about you, who you are, where you stand in the community, what school you go to, what you do. Become friends with an officer. Had I not met this retired lieutenant, I would have never got an answer. Did I get the ultimate answer, what I wanted? No. But did I get somewhere close? Yes. I got somewhere close to just to be a little content. Not just to know a little answer. So they did not like the fact that I was speaking to somebody. They thought I knew 6 other high-ranking guys in the police. A lot of times they were abusing me on the phone, threatening me to pick me up from my house. A lot of times they were saying, quote unquote, who do you think you are, talking to different people about your case. We told you already, this case, Detective so-and-so is working on it day and night. I told him I want answers. I want answers. Everyone knows who these people are. I know answers. I want answers. So here I am, still cannot let go of that anger. And the anger was hard to deal with. I wanted it. I wanted the answer. The family wanted me to forget about it. They said, well, what if they get caught? They'll come back and try to kill you. Maybe you'll be dead this time. You know, family want the best for you. They want you to get better. They want you to recover. They want you to overcome your challenges, but they don't want you to go after what you want, justice. I mean, justice is never easy. I don't think it will ever be easy. Justice is really hard to fight for. Do you always get the justice that you want? 9 out of 10 times, no. So in that regard, by February 2012, the detectives, the precinct has had it. From phone calls from the Deputy Commissioner's office to the Queen's Command, and they thought I knew all these different people, and this case is being reopened 2.5 years after this crime took place. And by February of 2012, I finally got to the precinct, but I had to go in there alone because at this time they were afraid if I had a wire, I had internal affairs with them, and just to give you, some advice, if you have any issues with the police, complaints, any abuse, any complaints whatsoever, the last thing you want to do is go to internal affairs because they will close your case, especially if you have friends in the police and you can make connections to get your answers that you want. You could try the media, and you could try working it in a way similar to how I reached out and met this great individual. And at that time, and by law, once a photo array is issued to the victim, that photo array is documented in the file, sealed and protected, and cannot be redone again. But because they were high-ranking officers in that, I didn't find out that they closed my case till I sat with them in August of 2011, 2 years later. Richard, the guy you picked back 6 months after you were brutally beat up, he was dead in 2005. And I got angry in the precinct. Well, why'd you tell me this? So as a victim, you can, and it's very possible you will be victimized even further. And we see it all across the news. You know, it's the victim's fault. You know, the victim, well, you know, why was she there? Why this happened?